In the middle of the night in the Baltic Sea, two ships turned off their transponders. A couple of days later, on the 26th of September 2022, seismographs detected a series of explosions. Danish F-16s rushed to the scene only to spot kilometer-wide gas bubbles. 3 of the 4 pipelines that made up Nord Stream 1 and 2, the infamous pipelines connecting Russia to Germany, a nearly 20 billion euro piece of infrastructure, had just gone up in bubbles. This, however, was no isolated incident. In the past several years, there have been multiple successful attacks targeting Europe's critical infrastructure just a few kilometers off the coast. A few weeks after the Nord Stream explosions, this internet cable connecting the Shetlands to the rest of the UK was severed, and this other internet cable in the south of France was cut off, disrupting internet in Africa and much of Asia. So why are these attacks taking place, and is there anything Europe can do about it? To answer that question, we first need to understand why Europe is so dependent on the sea. Europe is the most interconnected continent on the planet. Half of the EU's trade goes by the sea, and that number increases to a whopping 85% if we look at it in terms of volume. That makes the seas around Europe some of the busiest in the world. On top of that, 250 out of the 400 undersea internet cables which connect the world pass through Europe, which accounts for nearly 95% of global internet traffic. But that barely scratches the surface of the EU's offshore activities. Offshore pipelines bring natural gas across the Mediterranean and from the North Sea to Europe's industrial centers, accounting for nearly a quarter of all its supply. Undersea electric cables connect the countries around the North Sea, link Italy to the Balkans, and anchor Greece to Crete and then Cyprus. As Europe deploys more renewables, these connectors have a crucial role in stabilizing its electricity grid, allowing countries to balance their electricity consumption and production with one another. And then there are all the energy sources, be it in the form of gas fields or offshore wind farms. But this is only the beginning. Europe's seas are about to get a whole lot busier as a result of energy policy and technological development. As part of its drive for more renewables, Europe, which has the largest offshore wind potential in the world, intends to increase offshore wind output by tenfold, which could meet up to 30% of Europe's electricity consumption. And following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has resulted in a large part of Europe's energy supply being cut off, Norway and Cyprus are looking to ramp up natural gas production in the coming years. So you get the idea. Europe is betting big on the sea. But all of this development and excitement is creating new, big juicy targets in legal limbo in the middle of the ocean. So why are these attacks taking place, and why only now? Well, the first reason is the gaping hole in the document that regulates who owns the sea, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. This law distinguishes between 3 areas: territorial waters, the exclusive economic zone, also known as EEZ, and international waters. For the sake of this video, let's focus on the first 2, which cover nearly all of the oceans surrounding Europe, and incidentally, most of the attacks mentioned at the start of this video are taking place. Inside territorial waters, which are any water between the coast and 12 nautical miles, or 18 kilometers, protecting critical infrastructure is a national responsibility, and also a manifestation of sovereignty. But in the exclusive economic zone, which goes up to 200 nautical miles, the law and the responsibility on who has to protect assets there becomes more muddled. It's not clear if it's the company that's invested or the country that should take over security tasks. On top of this, disruptions there usually fall under the category of hybrid attacks, which usually don't have a clear or provable culprit. And that means that the international response by the organizations meant to guarantee European security, NATO and the European Union, are usually muted. Despite NATO having in its policy to include hybrid threats under Article 5, its Mutual Defense Clause, and EU Article 42, it's nearly impossible to retaliate when you can't prove who blew up the pipeline, and the pipeline exists in a legal gray area. That's why it should come as no surprise that the attacks on Nord Stream 1 and 2 happened just outside Denmark and Sweden's territorial waters. And the reason for this is that the law on the sea was designed to protect fisheries, which is an entirely different ballgame from infrastructure, which is fixed to one location and much more valuable. For decades, this is a problem that has managed to stay under the radar for the simple reason that there was nearly nothing there to protect. While there has been an explosion in the amount of offshore infrastructure since it was implemented, offshore wind has only been a thing since the 1990s, and it's only now being built further and further out at sea. On top of that, fear of confrontation in the Cold War made sure that whatever infrastructure was there, mostly in the form of oil rigs in the North Sea, were relatively safe. But now when the world is at the beginning of exponential growth, that very infrastructure is becoming more and more critical to the daily lives and security of citizens. At the same time, technological progress in the field of drones is making strikes easier. Ukraine has shown how a country without a navy could deliver critical blows to offshore infrastructure, navies, and ships. The combination of affordable weapons and plentiful targets is leading to a new type of warfare, where huge ships are no longer enough to protect a nation's coast, and if anything, are easy targets themselves. This security vacuum is potentially opening the door to a golden age of sabotage. And this is a hole that is being exploited by none other than Russia, which has circled around European infrastructure with its navy, submarines, and drones, projecting power from its Kaliningrad base in the Baltic Sea, the Arctic Ocean, and until the invasion of Ukraine, the Black Sea. It has sent submarines as far as Ireland and the south of France. The current breakdown in relations, which could last decades, could see Russia expand its sabotage operations, dealing repeated, if not critical blows to European infrastructure. But Russia is not the only threat. All that new infrastructure could offer a base of operations for criminal or terrorist organizations, becoming safe havens for drug labs or human trafficking rings, which could set up shop right off Europe's doorstep. In fact, the plot of Tenet centers around a secret international organization operating from an offshore wind farm in the North Sea. So Europe has this problem just waiting to happen. The security threats to its vital infrastructure means it has to monitor, police, and protect thousands of assets spread over millions of square kilometers of territorial waters and exclusive economic zone. And that responsibility falls to the Coast Guard of the different nations, which are for the most part minor, underfunded organizations which are best known for rescuing drunk swimmers, not protecting critical infrastructure. So of course countries could deploy their navies to patrol the seas, but having expensive ships out at sea just to watch a couple of wind turbines is not a long-term solution. This is something that was made abundantly clear in both the UK's 2021 Integrated Review and France's 22 Strategic Review, which focused on hybrid threats and drone warfare. And this was echoed in Poland's latest weapons purchases, which focus mainly on surveillance capabilities. To make matters even more complicated, the fragmentation of Europe's oceans between different exclusive economic zones means that ships can shift in and out of national jurisdictions, and cooperation to monitor them is in part hindered by lack of trust between allies. In the case of the Nord Stream 2 explosion, Sweden, Denmark, and Germany have outright refused cooperation in their respective investigations out of fear of security leaks. To keep costs manageable, collective strength and cooperation is needed, despite this lack of trust. And for European countries, that means turning to either the European Union or NATO, the two international organizations that bind Europe together. While the EU, UK, and Norway are actively encouraging the buildup of offshore capacity, since this is primarily a military affair and a security issue, this focus to solve this problem has been very much on NATO. The military alliance, which already serves mostly as a point of coordination, would help European countries make the best use of their new military arsenals. In fact, that coordination has already started, with NATO task forces now patrolling the North and Baltic Seas in the aftermath of Nord Stream 2. But that will only go so far, as the trust between the different countries, and it would do little to protect infrastructure from internal sabotage by alliance members, allowing for the reshaping of entire supply chains with the press of a button. Contentious infrastructure like, say, a rebuilt Nord Stream 2, which Russia is considering, or an electric cable connecting Cyprus to Greece, could be exposed to premature malfunction. But as Europe expands its critical infrastructure offshore, its members will need to work together to effectively defend them, lest it be starved of natural resources and its connection with the rest of the world. This was Into Europe. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for the latest updates and analysis on European news.